Lamont here with the forecast for the week of April 29th, 2024. So we obviously go from late April into May. The May forecast is up. If you're watching this before about noon Eastern time on the 27th, do stop by for the May forecast live. And otherwise, you can just kind of catch it in reruns at some later point in time. But the May forecast will be out there. Now, this last week of April coming into May is a very active week. We have some changing of signs. Mars and Venus are both coming home, as it were, to their home signs. On the 29th, that's Monday, Venus will enter Taurus, her home sign. And then on the 30th, Mars will enter Aries, his home sign. So these two planets are going to be dignified, as we say in the astrological world. They're at home. They function very, very well. Venus in Taurus, very much about sensuality, values, stuff, having nice stuff. And, it's good for those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's springtime, and it feels like it. And it's the sort of enjoying of the earth, right? It's the enjoying of the ground, of the springtime weather. And so the feel of Venus in Taurus is a good one. Now, Mars in Aries, this is that fiery kind of feeling that we're going to get. This is on Tuesday, and for about 6 weeks beyond, we have Mars in Aries, which is very much about competition, assertion, doing your stuff, doing your stuff. That's what it's about. It's a very forward-looking energy. So this is really helpful. This is really helpful for us to have this combination of energies in the sky. Venus and Mars, two very socially oriented planets, should help us out a little bit. Good feelings through the springtime. Definitely get the feel that we are pulling away from some of that Pisces energy that was so dominant through the late winter, early spring. And of course, we still have Pluto back in Aquarius, but he's by himself now. So the first thing, though, what does Venus do? She enters into her home sign of Taurus, and here's a fine how do you do. The first thing that happens is that she squares Pluto in Aquarius. So Venus-Pluto squares, a little tense, obviously. It's a square. Venus values, valuables, and Pluto in Aquarius representing perhaps the power of the collective. I imagine that might be a bit of a challenge for financial markets. I think that might be a little bit, and not just in the sense of it not being great for the economy. And the last couple of weeks we've had some sobering news in the economy and so on, but more along the lines of like challenges to the system. Right? Venus is in Taurus, where Jupiter and Uranus met last week. And there's a very, the smell of money kind of feel about it. And Pluto in Aquarius is a little bit pushing in on that from the perspective of like, well, who's making the money? How is this playing out? In terms of our personal lives, Venus square Pluto in the sky is going to make the most difference to people who have Venus-Pluto aspects in their natal chart. But it has a little bit of a sort of deadline kind of feel about it. It has a little bit of a, is there a struggle going on here kind of thing. I think Venus in Taurus just wants to have a nice time. Venus in Taurus wants to enjoy. I just want to enjoy what we have in relationship and socializing. It's just nice. Let's just do our thing. And then Pluto in Aquarius is like, yeah, but you know how much is going on in the world, really? You're sitting there with your margarita and you think everything is wonderful, but look what's going on in the world. It's that kind of tension that might affect us more than others, more than other types of tension, because there's so many types of tension. Later in the week, Venus goes on to make a nice trine. This is on May 4th. She goes on to make a nice trine to Juno. Now, Venus, what we want, and Juno, what we have. Juno recently turned direct, actually. Juno's now moving forward. And the nice trine aspect over here is, well, what we want and what we have sort of get on the same page, or there's an opportunity to get what we want and what we have on the same page, at least. It's not necessarily the case, but it's an opportunity. So maybe some relationship tensions earlier in the week, or socializing questions and tensions early in the week. And then relationship stuff might smooth out a little bit later on. Now, Mars gets into Aries, and of course, the first thing that he does is to make a nice sextile to Pluto, right? And instead of there being a tense aspect, this is a very, if we don't shut the phone, do I have to send a memo about shutting the phones off? Do I have to? Been warned. Okay, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, Mars and Pluto. Well, they're in a nice sextile relationship. And this is a little bit like, okay, now we have the values of the collective, Pluto and Aquarius, the power to the people right here, Pluto and Aquarius, and it's powering Mars in Aries, this sort of individuals who go off and, use the power of the collective to assert and do what they need to do. We'll see this you watch the news for that kind of thing. Now, in our personal lives, this is just a lot of energy. There's just a lot of energy into this, particularly those who have placements in early Aries, but not necessarily just them, or Aquarius, early Aquarius, but not just them. There is this fiery kind of active energy, which should really wind up working pretty well. So, interestingly, in the midst of what might be some financial, social, relationship tension, there's this sense of like, yeah, but we can act, we can go forward, we can do things. And that's, I think, the basic message of this week, is this sense of like, we've got tension, and that tension finds its release, hopefully in productive ways. Now, all of this is not only true in and of itself, but on the 2nd, May 2nd, Pluto will station to go retrograde in Aquarius, right? So again, early Aquarius folks are really going to be feeling this quite a bit. I suppose early Leo and Scorpio and Taurus folks will be feeling it quite a bit as well, especially the Taurus folks, now that I think about it. But Pluto stations, so let's say if this is the 2nd, we'll say the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd. We might sort of say, it peaks on the 2nd, but it's pretty high on the 1st, and really almost the whole week has some of this Pluto station energy. This is the Halloween in springtime kind of feel to it, right? We had the eclipses in early April. We had the Scorpio full moon, that was last week, and now we have the Pluto station. And Pluto station, Scorpio full moon, they really go very well together, very similar to the eclipse energy. Pluto stations, power and control, right? On the collective level, it's an Aquarius who has control in the collective. What are the masses doing, and so on. But in our personal lives, it's also who's in control. And with Pluto and Aquarius, I think that the field comes out something more like, how will I be judged, right? As I do this thing, how am I going to be judged? How will I be seen by others? So Pluto's in Aquarius. So we may have a little bit of the sense of judgment going on over there. But, again, Mars is sextile to station Pluto. Venus is square to station Pluto. There's there's tension, there's action and release. So I don't feel that this Pluto station is going to have quite the implosive energy that it usually does. Pluto stations usually feel implosive. It's like you suck the energy inwards. Sometimes we say it's a little bit like the, right before a thunderstorm or something like that, the calm before the storm, or that sort of, pulling inwards like we had at the solar eclipse. And there will be that feeling, but there's also that outgoing energy as Pluto fires up Mars, and actually probably fires up Venus too. So we begin the week with some shifts taking place. We feel ourselves being pulled into this Pluto station on Tuesday, and then we fly out of it. I would say we probably fly out of it as Mars pulls away from Pluto later in the week. We're heading, we're crossing the last quarter moon. We're heading towards next week's new moon. So the energy is a little beyond the peak. The energy is coming down a little bit, but all of the planets are kind of like stirring things up a little bit more at the same time. So it's an active week. It has a slightly goth vibe to it. There's a little bit of that sort of undercurrent. On a bad day, people that are not you, but people will, there'll be suspicion and jealousy. There could be some real tension, again, people driving, Mars in Aries wants to shoot out fast and Pluto's stationing, don't frustrate me, folks, because I gotta go. Uh, even more than usual. We've seen a lot of it lately with the eclipses and the full moon and all this. We've got quite a bit of stuff going on lately. So it's certainly not different than the last few weeks, but it continues that energy of the past few weeks. The high energy, high tension that we have had going on is going to continue. It is very, very possible, should be easy to use this energy in a productive way, though. This is really not a good time to go hide under your bed, right? Because Pluto will find you under your bed. Pluto's going to find you. This energy calls for you to do something. This energy calls for action, right? If you try to sit on it, it's going to brew internally, and that's not so good. That's not so good. You're better off finding a productive use for this energy. Take the beginning part of the week to decide what that's going to be. Wednesday onwards, just go do it. It's easy.